If you look at the Federal Reserve website, it says that the Great Depression lasted from 1929 until 1941, about 12 years or so. And the reason they say it ended in 1941 is because that's when the U.S. entered into World War II, and as a result of so many people becoming servicemen and employed by the U.S. government, it made the unemployment rate drop drastically. Now, over 60% of the men in the U.S. military for World War II were drafted against their will. So, yeah, if you add 10 million people onto the government payroll, it's going to drop the unemployment rate big time. But for the average person back home, the Great Depression did not end once the war started. In fact, a lot of the supply chain got much worse once the war started because so much of production that was going towards domestic things started moving towards the war effort. So a lot of things people may have been able to get prior to the war started to dry up a lot. So even after the war ended, inflation skyrocketed later in the 40s. In 1946, it topped 17%, and by 47, it had hit 20%. So the inflation really didn't slow down until the very end of the decade of the 40s and into the beginning of the 50s. So even though the officials say that the Depression only lasted for 12 years, for the average citizen of the U.S., the Depression lasted the better part of 20 years before things got better. I mean, just think about that, 20 years. And what's going on today? So many factors that we have going on look so similar to things that were going on prior to the Great Depression. Could it be possible we could be moving into a multi-decade depression sort of event too? Now, once it kicked off, and it started with in 29 the stock market crash. But if you weren't in the stock market, things really weren't that noticeable in the economy until about a year later, in the fall of 1930. You started having bank failures and all kinds of problems in the banking and financial systems. And as a result of all of those problems happening, the politicians of the time passed all kinds of crazy bills to try to help the economy. You know, they passed the Glass-Steagall Act and the act to confiscate gold from the American citizens, and there was a bank holiday in the early 30s where all the banks across the entire country were actually closed down for over a week. And in my opinion, a lot of the things they did actually extended the duration of the Depression. If they had just stayed out of the way and just let the economy take its medicine, you know, it probably would have been a pretty difficult 5 years for everybody, but then it would have been over and started getting better. But politicians just can't help but stick their nose in there and start instituting things that just end up making it worse. And then, of course, uh, they dragged us into World War II. The American people at the time were completely against getting involved in the war. But Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the president at the time, uh, what he cared about most was fame and notoriety. He really wanted to get into the war because he knew it would put him in the history books as the wartime president, and he knew it would help reduce the unemployment rate so they can say the Depression was over. Well, because the American people did not have the support to join the war, he knew he needed to find a way to get that support. What he did was he did a big uh, embargo on the Japanese cutting off their oil and aviation fuel supplies, and also confiscated all Japanese wealth here domestically because he knew that tight squeeze was going to cause the Japanese to respond in some way. And of course, that's when Pearl Harbor happened. Then the American people got on board. Now, I would argue that if it weren't for those actions by FDR against the Japanese, we wouldn't have lost those 2,400 lives in Pearl Harbor, and possibly would have never gotten involved in that war, and then all the millions of people whose lives were ruined over it. Whatever. But you know that the next time some kind of event happens, whether it's financial or some other health crisis or whatever comes up, the politicians are always going to act. And you can't really blame them because it's generally the citizens of a country that ask them to act. I mean, so many people talk so badly about Hugo Chavez for being a communist dictator, but really all he was doing was giving the Venezuelan people what they were asking for. So these politicians are despicable human beings, but really they're just doing what the cancerous society of people are asking them to do. In 2020, people are, oh, I'm so scared. Do something. So, of course, the politicians did something. So next time another event happens, they're going to use it to their advantage and do something again. Now, when you look at the current crop of rulers, leaders, whatever you want to call these people, presidents, prime ministers, and even beyond elected officials to unelected bureaucrats like the people in the World Health Organization, the United Nations, World Economic Forum, the International Monetary Fund, the European Union. All of these people have no accountability to the voter, but yet they still make decisions, and then everybody worldwide institutes it. You may say that your elected officials are making decisions for you, but is it really? If the World Health Organization tells them they have to institute something and then they just go and institute it, is that what you voted for? No. Your voted officials aren't even making those decisions. Some bureaucrat is. So when I look across at just all the people running the world and the people running these big tech companies and all these types, do they instill you with confidence in their decision making? I know they don't make me feel confident. When you look throughout human history, really history is just a chronicle of people in power making a lot of really bad mistakes that cause the average citizen to suffer. That's really human history in a nutshell. And I think it'll be the same way in the future. These people are just, you know as well as I do, they're going to screw this up. All it takes is one person in charge to do one thing that starts a series of dominoes, and this whole system falls apart. And you know somebody, one of these people is going to screw it up. It's going to happen. So I would ask you, are you ready for a multi-decade depression? Are you ready for your politicians to again make bad decisions that will affect every aspect of your life, that will affect your supply chains and the things you need in your job? Are you prepared for being pulled into another world war? I mean, previous wars have been bad enough, but with the toys we have today, I mean, man, a real hot war worldwide would be terrible. Just absolutely terrible. Whether you're talking about nuclear weaponry or bioterrorism, chemical weapons, uh, the power grids are vulnerable, so you can have all of our electrical systems hacked. I mean, there's just so many things that can be going wrong. And some of you are going to say, well, I don't think that will happen. Well, you know, what you think doesn't matter. What I think doesn't matter. What's going to happen is going to happen regardless of what you think or what you want. And it's not, this isn't something that may happen one day. This is happening right now. You look around, sure, the mainstream media says the consumer's strong, the economy's strong. Do you really believe that when you look around? My opinion, whatever the mainstream media tells me, I believe the exact opposite thing. I don't care what it is. They tell me something safe and effective. No, it's probably not. So, I mean, we have all-time highs in mortgage defaults, in auto loan defaults, credit card defaults. People are maxing out their credit cards because they can't afford food. They're buying their food and paying their utility bills on credit cards, and just, I don't even really need to go into this. You guys probably know. I mean, anybody with an IQ above room temperature can tell that things are not going good right now in the world. So, what are you doing about it? Are you preparing for something like that? Even if it's not affecting you right now, you say, well, I got a good paying job, I got some money set aside, I'm doing okay. Well, say we're in year one of a 20-year depression. Maybe it doesn't affect you till year 5 or year 10. But then what happens then? What are you going to do at that point? Maybe it's a good idea to start thinking about these things now and start preparing as if we are at the beginning of another Great Depression. And what kind of things are you going to have to do to get through it? We've all heard stories from older people in the Great Depression. My great grandma grew up and had some stories to tell. They ate the family dog. Man, you don't want to be in that kind of position. So think about these things. And don't worry, I'm not going to eat brute, even in the worst of conditions. Yeah, he's got a lot of extra meat on him, but in his age and poor health conditions, I don't think anybody would find him too appetizing. But it doesn't help to just sit all day either and watch videos about what's going on in the world, or watching your favorite news or this or that. Really, that all that's a waste of time, man. Turn this stuff off and start doing things. Start taking actions. What's your plan? If you don't have the materials on hand to institute your plan, then get those materials on hand. If you don't have the skills and knowledge, acquire them. Start doing these things. I'm telling you to turn off my videos right now and go do something. Yeah, I know my videos may be very informative and very well produced and everything, but I'm still telling you, turn this stuff off. Go do something.